Seeing as I'm the last one up here, I think it's my turn. James chapter 1. James 1, verse 22. Give you something to do while I ramble, break the ice, that sort of thing, ease my own nerves up here. As I was prepping for this studying, at first, when preacher gives you a topic and says, would you please preach, normally it's rather disconcerting because you have a very finite subject and you have to find something in that. Normally, that's the problem. I remember in Pitt, for those that remember, preachers in training class. I know some of us were in here, Matt, Brother Sam, Brother Josh. Typically, when preacher gave us a topic in Pitts, it was terrible. It was an obscure text or something that was like, dear Lord, please give me wisdom. I don't even know where to start with this. This is the opposite. He said, God's faithfulness. If you rarely thought about it, the entire book is about God's faithfulness. So my trouble, I don't know about Brother Matt, Brother Caleb, Brother Josh, but it was actually narrowing it down where A, we didn't spend the next 2 weeks here, or it being a shotgun type message. And I hope tonight that I can be precise and succinct and get the 10 thoughts that I had into a cohesive one or two. I do, as Brother Caleb and Josh were preaching, made me nervous. Brother Josh wasn't too bad. Brother Josh's message actually helped not clarify a thought, but as Brother Josh, he just touched on something real quick. And have you ever had, you've had a thought as you're thinking and studying about something, and it's just, the light bulb moment just escapes you. And then you hear someone preach or something. So Brother Josh, I have to thank you that you touched on something that just, it's like, oh, that is how I've been thinking, or that has helped me clarify. Brother Caleb straight up terrified me because I thought he was going to preach a lot of my message. And at first I'm like, okay, Lord, am I supposed to get a whole new sermon here? But then he gave me some clarity, and the fact that everything has went together so far means we need it. I don't need to get something new. So tonight, my message for the guys in the back is called Reactive Christians. Okay, so if you will, give me a little bit of space, if you will. I'm going to read our text. I'm going to explain the reactive part, because most of the time you think of reactive, nuclear reactions, allergic reactions. These things are not good. But reactive Christians, and there's a reason why I'm using that word. And then I'll wrap everything up and tie into the text here in James 1, verse 22. And that says, but be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. For if any be a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass. For he beholdeth himself and goeth his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he was. But whoso looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continueth therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed. You say, Brother John, what does that have to do with God's faithfulness? I asked for a little bit of space. But it ties in with being a reactive Christian. Brother Josh just barely touched this last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. But reactive. In the field in which I work in the adult foster care field. Part of my job was, while I was program director, was to write programming for staff regarding the clients. My job was to take in a client, to read up on them as much as I could, and then to create two types of programming. One was proactive programming, which was to take a client when they were calm and at their baseline and tell staff, here's what you do to keep them there as much as possible. But just due to the nature of people, you cannot control people, I also had to create reactive programming. And reactive programming taught staff how to respond when that client went from being baseline to behavioral. And so all of this reactive was their response to another action. We know the laws of nature. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so I want to tie into being a doer of the word, not just a hearer. Okay? In regards to God's faithfulness, and normally you wait until the end of a sermon to wrap everything up, and then you present it. But I'm going to do that at the beginning, because I want every person here to be thinking the entire sermon, at least thinking about the sermon. I don't want you to just think on anything, but be thinking, how have I reacted? How have I responded to God's faithfulness to me? And I'm going to talk, I want you to think the first half of the message, then there's going to be a warning, and then it's not like a 2-minute warning, just a warning for you to think about. And then the second half of the message. So for the first part here, I want you to think, how have I responded to God's faithfulness? Brother Caleb's message, Brother Josh's message. If you've come away from either of those messages thinking, we are great, we are good as we are, you've missed the point. Brother Caleb's message, talking about God's the same yesterday, today, forever. His power has not weakened. That means we need to go forward. So, in the next few minutes, this may be the shortest message. This may be the longest. I don't know. Normally, I try to have an idea of how long this is going to be. But some of the stuff I'll talk about, Brother Caleb has mentioned, Brother Josh has mentioned. So I won't expound upon that. But in the words of being, or in the thought of being doers versus being hearers. Brother Josh's message last week. There, I'm going to start with this. There is not a single thing, okay, in the Christian life that we are the proactive, that we are the ones doing the action. We are only ever reactive Christians to what God has done for us. So, having said that, how have you been reactive? How have you reacted, responded, whatever synonym you want to put in there? How have you responded to God's faithfulness? One last thing before I go forward. This came to me as this afternoon, as most preachers that don't preach a whole lot. I was just poring over my notes, highlighting, Lord, please help me not to forget. But relationships impact our reactions, okay? So, gentlemen, if you have a child, you hear them scream, you react to that, or ladies as well. If you have a daughter, you run fast. If you have a son, you walk to them. Gentlemen, if your wife screams, you run like all get out to realize it's just another spider. Okay? So, with that in mind, God has been faithful. Okay? If our relationship to Him, whether it's great or small, should help dictate how we respond to what He's done to us, how have you responded to that faithfulness? Have you been faithful in much? Have you been very little faithful? How have you responded in the past? Today, we're going to draw a line, and we'll talk about the future. How will you respond later on? But if relationships, and often if we have a great relationship, we're going to respond faster or better. So I thought, we know who God is, right? Or at least we strive. I wanted to show you a couple things. Turn in Revelation 19. That it doesn't hurt in the least bit to remind us of who God is. And again, several of these verses, Brother Josh, Brother Caleb, they have already touched upon. But the Lord brought this verse to mind, Revelation 19 and verse 11. You want to talk about the ultimate action of faithfulness. I'm sure there's the better way to say it. Ultimate expression of faithfulness. In Romans 19:11, actually, that is not where I wanted you to go, but that's okay. Reminding you of God, names mean something, right? So in Revelation 19:11, and I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. So if your name, capital F there, to be called faithful, that's something. Now go to 1 Peter 1. Just a quick reminder of who God is. Because if we think God is small, if we think God hasn't been that faithful to us, why should we be faithful back? 1 Peter. It's amazing how preaching, you forget where books of the Bible are. 1 Peter 1. 1 Peter 1:17. You also, when preachers say the reference, it's actually for their own benefit to make sure we're in the right spot. 1 Peter, it's really, 1 Peter 1:17 through 21. 1 Peter, here we go. And if you call on the Father who without respect of persons judgeth according to every man's work, pass the time of your sojourning here in fear. For as much as ye know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things, as silver and gold, from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, as a lamb without blemish and without spot, who verily was foreordained. That's a powerful word there, foreordained. Before the foundations of the world, but was manifest in these last times for you, who by him do believe in God that raised him up from the dead and gave him glory, that your faith and hope might be in God. You want to talk about the ultimate example of faithfulness? Have you ever tried to think about eternity? God is eternal. We are finite. We can only operate in the confines of time. So God in his eternality, Jesus, I don't know how that conversation went. But if you will, because all we can do is wonder and imagine. So before time was created, before the foundations of the world were created, the Trinity had a conversation. And Jesus agreed in that conversation that we're going to create man. Yep, check. Create the world. Check. Man is going to be disobedient. And at some point in time, I agree, I am going to set aside all but my essential glory. I'm going to go to earth, become obedient unto the death of the cross. And watching that play out, if it were me, this is very much humanizing Jesus. But after 2,000 some odd years, actually, what do they figure? 2,000 years up to the flood, 2,000 between the flood and Christ, then 33. 4,033 years, you watch man repeatedly disobey, rebel, literally worship the opposite of you, the creation, not the creator, but yet he still set aside that essential glory. He came down to earth in the form of a baby. Humbled himself, sacrificed himself on the cross. That is the God we serve. If that doesn't encourage, challenge, beseech you to be faithful in return, folks, I don't know what to tell you at all. But it didn't stop there. God's faithfulness in, you name anyone in the Bible. Yeah, you have Moses, you have David, you have Joseph, You have Job. How have you responded to God's faithfulness? We know how this book is chocked full of individuals that we know how they have responded. So in the past, I want you to think of your life from Christian on, not from a baby, that doesn't count. From the day you accepted Christ as your Savior until 6 o'clock. That's where we'll draw the line. 6 o'clock tonight. Up until now, how have you responded? Have you responded in kind? Have you responded very little? I can't answer that. That's between you and God. But I want you to think tonight, how have you responded? Because He has been faithful since before the foundations of the world to us. Job 13:15, Brother Josh mentioned this in his sermon. Though He slay me, yet will I trust Him. Folks, just remember that God's faithfulness through the hard times, in the hard times, the little munchkin that's been with us, I won't name any names just because I do have to watch what I say online due to the situation, but memorized very well. Thank you to the schoolgirls that helped her learn Psalm 23. Just the other day, we were talking and we're like, oh yeah, do you remember that? And repeated the whole thing back. But God's faithfulness in verse 4, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Just remember that even in the hard times, that doesn't mean that God says, time out. My faithfulness doesn't apply here. He is there with us. God's faithfulness to us doesn't mean that we are going to be without trial, without problems, without difficulty. Folks, would you agree that thus far, and I haven't even went into it in depth, we could literally spend weeks and months on that. God has been faithful to us. Would you say amen? Now, I want to give us a little warning and transition into the James 1:22 being doers and hearers. Okay, the warning is the Lord. I don't even remember when this thought started coming to me, but we as humans, we enjoy looking back on the past, do we not? I was working a shift one day, and this house loved sports. And so they were watching ESPN. Literally 24/7 of old shows, basketball games, talking about who's the GOAT, greatest of all time. We love rehashing past experiences, and even the Bible. Now, don't get me wrong. The Bible is given to us for examples. Some of them are do this. Some of them are stay as far away from this type of folk as you can. And so thinking of God's faithfulness, this little warning here is focused on today. See, I want us to be careful with being enamored with the past. You see, Brother Caleb talked about, I think it was Hebrews 13. Jesus Christ the same yesterday and today and forever. That means that the God of creation, He didn't run out of steam. That's not why on day 7 He rested, because His PowerPoints were down and, oh man, that was, need to take a break today. In the Old Testament, when He moved the sun backwards, when the sun stood still, that did not tire Him out. When the Israelites crossed through the Red Sea, when He poured water from the rock, that did not tire Him out. You fast forward, Christ rising from the grave, that did not tire God out. The God of Paul, of Peter, the God of the early Christians, to this day, God has yet to be tired. So this little pause, this little warning is even revivals. We look back on revivals. We're celebrating 50 years of God's faithfulness to us. Be careful with being enamored with the past. Oh man, do you remember hearing about that revival? Don't get me wrong. There's nothing bad with discussing that. But if we get so enamored with the past, we are going to forget today. Because the God of yesterday still has the power for today. We want to see revival here, do we not? I think everyone would agree to that. But if we're constantly looking back, we're going to forget about today and miss out for what God has for us tomorrow. If we miss out today, then there will be no tomorrow for this church. Go to Matthew 25, and we'll start wrapping up. This is a personal thought. Preacher mentioned something like this a couple weeks ago, that we have an issue if all we have is yesteryear. Because God hasn't lost power. So if all we're able to do is celebrate what's happened in past years, then we're doing something wrong. Because God is still able to work right now, right here. How many of y'all went to college? All right. If you ever dated in college, I don't know about those that went to a university, but if you went to Bible college, the big thing you always heard if a couple broke up was, it's not you, it's me. Even though that is always code for it's you. Okay? And I say that very humorously, but to make the point very pointed. That if we as Twin Porch Baptist Church, I as John Wark, but we as family units, as men, if we're not seeing God working today, folks, it's not God. It is not God because He hasn't changed. Yesterday, God didn't wake up and said, oh, you know what? I could be doing this better. Or, you know what? I have not been as faithful to Twin Porch Baptist Church as I should have. I need to do better. That is not God. By definition, He would not be God. So it's hard to hear. And this is a regurgitation of what God has been working on me, just so you know. So I say it to you because I want to share my heart. But if Twin Porch Baptist Church, if we aren't seeing God work, it's not God. It's not, sorry, Lord, it's not you, it's me. And we're saying that tongue in cheek. It is us, church. It is. How are we responding? No, we're going to go to Matthew 25. If you're not already there, I do realize I was talking, not turning. Matthew 25. You know what it is. Matthew 25, 19 through 21. I'm reading the very end of the parable of the talents. The 3 servants, one was given 5, 2, 1. This is the very end, folks. After a long time, the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoneth with them. And so he that received 5 came, brought the other 5, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more. His Lord said unto them, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. God's power has not waned. It has not weakened. It has not stopped. God is not hard of hearing. God is not tired. God is not on vacation. So for the last couple of minutes, I want you to focus, shift your attention. What is in the past is in the past. Very deep thought. What has happened is in the past. But moving forward, today can be a new era for Twin Porch Baptist Church. We all want this right here. We want one day when we stand before the God of heaven, the God of creation, we want to hear these words, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Here's where I'm going to tie this in with James 1:22. Those in Sunday mornings that have been here when I've been able to do the prayer meeting, and then I've prayed with them. my prayer for some time for myself has been, Lord, help me to be a doer, not a hearer. Because if we want God's power on our church, if we want this church to grow, if we want there to be another 50 years of God's faithfulness, here's the thing. God isn't going to change. So God's going to be faithful to us. But if we want there to be another 50 years, it is all dependent on how we react to God's faithfulness. It's not God. He's not going to change. So if we remain on this earth for the next 50 years, for there to be a Twin Ports Baptist Church for the next 50 years, folks, it depends on us, on how we respond. If we are doers or if we're hearers. I think I'm a pretty good hearer. Sometimes my wife disagrees. Or the distinction is I hear but I don't listen. So I don't know if you guys have heard that. But we have the choice moving forward. Are we going to sit in these pews? I'm thankful for our pastor that I know when he comes, he's studied, he's prayed up. I was thinking this past week, I've been in between 300 and 400 churches due to singing for college. And our pastor is still in my top 3 preachers that I enjoy listening to. Folks, I don't think we really know how blessed we are to have pastor. And he can be entertaining and funny at times, but I always know that he's going to come prepared and prayed up and ready to preach. And so we each week can come here and hear something from God. I don't have a church where I fear if I go here, am I going to hear something that scratches my ears, or am I going to hear something that's going to stomp on my feet? Am I going to be encouraged, exhorted, convicted? I know it's any one of those because it's a message from God. But we then have the option after hearing. Are we going to put feet to those actions, what God has convicted us? Are we going to be faithful to be obedient to what God has spoken to us here? Because if all we do is sit on our blessed assurances here, we never are doers, we never grow. Our faithfulness to what God has showed us to do is minimal. Folks, there will not be another 50 years. So how will I respond in the coming days, the coming years, Lord willing, if God has it? How will I react to God's faithfulness? Last thought, and then we'll go. Hebrews 11. We know it as, you don't have to turn there. I thought about reading the whole thing, but I thought that might just be cruel. We know it as, or we call it the Hall of Faith. There's no title in the Bible that says Hebrews 11. This is the Hall of Faith. Okay, there's nothing, but that's what we call it. We know the men in there to be men of faith. Great men of faith. We think of Spurgeon. We think of Moody. Wow, those are great men of faith. But did you know that God is not biased? God is not a respecter of men. God is not woke. He isn't, there's a person in minority. I'm going to be more faithful to you than John Wark. That is not God. He is no respecter of persons. And this was a humbling thought. Again, we agree, God has not changed. He is as faithful today as he was back then. So what's the difference between men like Spurgeon, men like Abraham, David, Job? Because they're men. Have you read the Bible? Most of them messed up pretty good at some point. What's the difference? How they responded to God's faithfulness. That's it. God didn't one day, here's some for you, some for you. David, he didn't do that for a single one of those men. They merely reacted to God's faithfulness more than I have. I'll be honest. Because what their lives, my goal is to shoot for that. To be as responsive to God's faithfulness as some of the men in the Bible. As Paul. Paul, the greatest, we consider the greatest Christian. He was an average man. He did not get more faithfulness from God than any of us here. But yet he went on to become what we consider like right under Christ. Like it's okay that he said, follow me as I follow Christ, because he had almost attained. Not completely, but he had almost attained. And nobody argues with that. But he was no different than you, Brother Joe, Brother Jojo. He was no different than Brother Caleb, Brother Josh, Brother Ron. Except for the fact that his faithfulness to God was obviously unique or higher, however you want to say that, because he saw God work. And we know that God's power hasn't waned, hasn't waxed, he's over the hill, so, if you don't get the response from God, that is not how it has happened. So looking forward to the future, we want there to be, I think we'd agree, we don't want there to be 50 years, only because we want God to come back. Isaiah, I think it's 26, I have it written down here. Trust ye in the Lord forever, referencing his eternality. For in the Lord Jehovah is everlasting strength. Be faithful to him. He's not going to let you down. He's not going to fail you. No matter the hardship, no matter the troubles, he will still be faithful to you if you will put your faith and trust in him. I'm not just referring to salvation. I hope everyone in here has, as Brother Josh mentioned this morning. If you haven't, you got a bigger problem, and take care of it tonight. But aside from that, if you trust God with your soul, just remember, he can take care of the rest. Easy peasy, if you will allow me the saying. God hasn't changed. He hasn't waxed old. How will you respond to his faithfulness? He's given us his word. How's your faithfulness in Bible reading? How's your faithfulness in prayer? How's your faithfulness in church attendance? I realize I'm speaking to the choir here. Everyone is here. How will you respond to God's faithfulness? He's not going to fail you. He's not going to let you down. So why, church, Twin Ports Baptist Church, why don't we go all in? 2020 has been a terrible year, relatively speaking. It's full of oddities, uniqueness. I hope his return is just around the corner. So why not go all in the rest of the year, if you haven't already? Again, your response, your reactiveness to God's faithfulness, that's between you and him. Okay? I'm not going to judge. I'm not even going to think about it. Because if you look at James 1:22, the whole purpose of this is that we will look for ourselves. Ever take magnifying glasses and then you get the sunlight and try to burn ants or something like that? The magnifying glass of God's word is meant for you to look at yourself, not other people. Because everything is between you and God. When we stand before God, it's not going to be Brother Travis giving account for me. It's going to be you giving account to God of yourself. So church, why don't we, for the next 50 years, why don't we go all in? God's not going to fail us. His faithfulness is not going to run out. You're not going to receive a tweet at 5 a.m. in the morning that says, sorry folks, God is out of business. It's not going to happen. He is the same yesterday, today, forever. Let's not get enamored with the last 50 years because he's not out of power. We can do better, see greater things for the next 50 years. That's the great thing about God. Twin Ports Baptist Church, you are my family. The ball is in our court. God has been, God is, God will remain faithful. How will we react to his faithfulness. Let's pray. Father God, you are so wonderful that you remain faithful to creatures that constantly fail, falter, reject you. What is man that thou art mindful of him? The fact that you are mindful of us is astonishing. Father, may we be a fraction faithful back to you. As the pianists play, if you would stand together, keep your